Hi, I'm Ken Fisher. Throughout this season, our focus is New York City and the Great Recession. Welcome to this edition of CityWide. I'm pleased to be joined by Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, Executive Director of the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York, one of the largest social service providers in the city. Welcome to CityWide.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
So you are the head of a faith-based organization, but faith without works is dead. So tell us about the work of Catholic Charities.
Well, faith without works is dead. And one of the things I like to say about Catholic Charities is that we're Catholic in our inspiration. We're Catholic in our values, and because of that, we serve people who are Catholic and non-Catholic alike. We do not ask a person's religion. We serve people who are in need, and we've been privileged to be part of the fabric of New York for well over 100 years in a variety of ways and a variety of agencies. I mean, yes, I can talk about the fact that that we are a large family of agencies, about 90 different agencies providing a range of different services. But what's critical to us, and particularly in this time of economic downturn, of recession, is that every person is treated with dignity and respect, because from our perspective, we believe no matter what religion anyone is, that we believe they're made in the image and likeness of God and deserve to be treated with that compassion and with that dignity.
Give us an example, a couple of examples of the range of services you provide.
Well, we can begin with those who are very, very small. Today, in the various Catholic Charities programs throughout New York City, and I have to say even in the suburbs, the lower Hudson Valley, there will be over 4,000 preschool age kids who are in daycare programs, in Head Start programs that are being run by one of the Catholic Charities agencies in the New York City area. If you go to the other end of the spectrum, there are senior citizen centers in which seniors will get a nutritious meal in Staten Island and in a range of other places, and all various services in between are provided by different Catholic Charities agencies.
So it's been about 2 years since turmoil came to the financial markets, a little bit more than a year since the economists pronounced that we were in fact in a recession, and now the indications are that it is a significantly deeper recession than we had experienced at any time since World War II. What has been the impact on the population that you serve?
The impact has been great. But you know, Ken, what I have to say is that even in good times, a lot of the people we help don't get stock options. They don't get huge bonuses. So even in good times, there are a lot of our fellow New Yorkers that are struggling because they're barely making ends meet and because they've had some real problems in their lives, and we have been there to help them to get through those hard times. But to answer your question, in the past year or two, it has been more difficult to help those individuals, and there are more people who are asking for basic services. I've oftentimes said is that the job we do, while it can be very complex, in some ways it's pretty simple. We just want to make sure that people have the basic necessities so that they can live their lives in some dignity. They need a roof over their heads. They need a nutritious meal. They need love and support. And they need a job. And I have to say, if we could work out a world in a city in which everybody had love and support from a family, everybody had a decent job, well, the food and the housing would fall into place and I could retire.
Have you seen a spike in demand, and is it coming from traditional underserved populations or from others?
Well, both. You know, one of the things that when I talk to the people who do the work, they say, boy, somebody who was kind of helping us last year at one of our food programs, this year they've come in and they said, gee, can you help me with some food because I lost my job. I'm having a hard time making ends meet. So 2 things have happened. There are new people coming to us, and those whom we would have referred to maybe as the working poor, some of them are no longer working. And they were poor to begin with, so now they don't even have enough to get by, and so they're coming to us asking for help. So that's one of the things that's going on. One of the other things that's going on is our approach is that we want to help people and we want to give them some hope too. So it's not our goal for the people who come to us for basic needs that they keep coming back and back and back. That's not treating people with dignity. So a lot of what we do is to try to get people who maybe can't make ends meet because they don't have a job to figure out how they get a job. Well, that's become more difficult because there are fewer entry-level jobs. And so people being unemployed, people who are trying to re-enter the work market, that's become much more difficult.
Have you seen a drop-off in contributions to your efforts?
Yes, but I have to be really honest with you. Yes, there has been a downturn, but I've also seen extraordinary generosity. And I've seen people who are struggling continue to be generous. Yes, contributions have been down, and I'm not going to say they haven't been, but what we say to people is, listen, if you can, we need you more now than ever. And so many people have stepped up to the plate. And in some cases, people have been more generous than they have been in the past. So yes, it's a struggle. We've had to tighten our belts, but I'm just so grateful for the generosity of New Yorkers.
During the boom times, let's say the last 8 years, the last 10 years, when there seemed to be just so much wealth being generated in the city, was it your sense that there was a reduction, a genuine reduction in the size of the underclass, that people were being able to move into the working class or the middle class, or is that core number of poor people static?
Well, probably there's a core number that remains, but it's not the same people. So it's people who are poor who get jobs. Then what happens around this town? It's so sad sometimes. Why do people wind up needing help? Well, because maybe there's been an incident of a family breakup. Maybe there's been an illness. One of the people who, you'd almost just want to cry when you heard this story is there was this young woman 2 years ago who was actually assistant producer in, I think, one of the shows, maybe not quite as prestigious as this show, but maybe it was on CNN, I forget where, but who woke up one morning, she's in her 30s, and she kind of had a partial stroke. And she kept going around looking for help and couldn't get help. And so she finally came to us and she said, I need to go to a shelter because I just can't do it anymore. And boy, the worker who worked with her said to her, she looked her in the face, she said, no way, you're not going to a shelter. We're going to figure this out. Well, she's now living in a small studio apartment and she's getting by. But so she wasn't part of that group of people who were poor 3 years ago. She was then, and hopefully as her health improves, she'll get out of it. So in New York, I think what we have is not, for most people, a situation in which, it's the same people who are poor year after year. Although there are some. But it's people who make it, who move forward, and then some new people wind up, we try to move them up. So I think it's a moving group of people.
You've been in the social service field for a long time. Is this recession different from downturns you've seen in the past?
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm not an economist. I know what I read in the newspaper, but I also know when I walk the streets and I take a cab or I drive around the city, I can tell you for the past year or two, getting around this town on the streets has been a lot easier. There are just fewer people. It used to be, if you tried to get around this town, you kind of loved Memorial Day because all of a sudden you could get there 10 minutes quicker. Well, I noticed last year, when it got to Labor Day, traffic didn't pick up. There were fewer truck deliveries. And that's just kind of me observing what's going on. So it is different. And what's different is that people who have lost their job, it's taken them a lot longer to find new jobs. And the thing, I do believe this when I read this in the paper these days, okay, the stock market, I think it broke 10,000 again, and that's wonderful. But what you need are jobs. You need people to be able to work, to support themselves, to support their families. And that's one of the things that's different, but I think what made this one so very different is at the center of this great recession was the financial crisis that we hit in the financial services, the banks, and that's what New York is so much about. So that's what I think made this different. It wasn't a downturn primarily in cars going overseas. It wasn't clothes and textiles going to different places. This hit what is at the core of New York.
And just a lot of money disappeared almost overnight. People lost their jobs, home values went down, bonuses weren't as big, the restaurants weren't as busy, and all of that just has an impact, I guess, on everybody.
Yeah, and Ken, that's a very good point, because I know everybody likes to say, well, the greed on Wall Street or the people who got mortgages they shouldn't have gotten and all of that. Well, all right, I've been in this business long enough. There's enough blame for all of us, including me, when things go wrong. However, we are so interdependent and entwined with each other these days. What happens when those stocks go down? Regular people's pensions lose money. And so when a union is negotiating for contracts for $30,000, $40,000 a year jobs, what they're saying now is, well, don't give us, so much of a salary increase because we need you to put more money in the pension funds because the pension funds aren't worth what they are. We are in this together whether we like it or not. And so this has affected everybody. The people in their early 60s who said, boy, I can retire in a few years. I have enough money. If I get 5% interest or 7% interest, I have enough to live on. Well, they're going to be working to 70, 75 now. So this crisis really, while focused on Wall Street, it affected Queens Boulevard, it affected the Grand Concourse, it affected Highland Boulevard in Staten Island, and so many other different places.
CityWide will continue right after this.
Take out meals for just $12.99. Call now.
Sherry Pearson. You are the sole surviving heir of the King of Montanopolis, and you are now worth $45 million.
I'm rich! This can't be real.
Of course it's not real. Come on. Having money isn't about luck. Like that takeout meal. Cook at home instead, you can save thousands a year. Feed me. Feed the pig.
Welcome back to CityWide. We're speaking with Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, Executive Director of Catholic Charities. Immigration was one of the things that sparked the revitalization of New York. Neighborhoods from East New York to the South Bronx all of a sudden coming back to life. But it also imposed a lot of stress on the social network of the city. Could you talk a little bit about the impact of immigration and also where you see those trends now in light of the recession?
Well, immigration has been part of New York. New York has been the gateway. And so we are an immigrant city. If we're an immigrant country, this is an immigrant city. And immigrants make this city great. How often when we go out to have something to eat, what do we say? Well, where do you want to go eat? And people say, well, what do you want to go eat? You want to eat Italian, you want to eat Indian, you want to eat Chinese, you want to eat whatever. So we define ourselves in a sense as an immigrant town. And immigrants make this place great. But it comes with challenges because, and I'll tell you a little bit of a story. I was at a national meeting with our Catholic Charities agencies, and they had, I forget what the program was, but let's say it was a program on training people for work or something. And there's people from someplace in the Midwest, wonderful place, but they were just talking about what a great program this was. And they said, and you can have all the material you want. So I raised my hand, being a New Yorker, and said, I'll take it, and I'll take it in 4 different languages. And they said, oh, well, we only have it in English. No, that's not our town. Our town is one in which we've welcomed people of different languages. I'm a firm believer. And if you talk to parents of children, they want their children to learn English because that is a role of empowerment. We need to help people to keep their own culture, but we also need to make sure that they're part of the city, that they have the tools to move forward. So it is a challenge to do that. But for the most part, immigrants are part of the workforce of this city. Even if you look at some of our immigration laws, they're ineligible for some of the benefits that are here, even if they're legal. They're not able to get them. But it is a challenge for our schools. It's a challenge for our churches, our congregations.
Congress is debating the health care, actually I don't think it's a health care reform bill, it's a health insurance reform bill now. Right. One of the contentious issues is whether or not legal immigrants should be eligible for any of the government subsidies. Does your organization have a position on that?
Yeah, our feeling is that immigrants should be treated with dignity and respect. And our overall perspective is that we need comprehensive immigration reform. Quite frankly, I am not as concerned about some of the provisions in the health care bill regarding immigrants because there's a bigger issue. We have to figure out a way to make sure that those who are in our city are able to come out of the shadows. We also have to make sure that we have a secure borders. We also have to make sure that there is a path in which people can become part of this country and new immigrants can come in. My own preferences, I think we deal with the healthcare issues as part of the immigration reform bill. I understand the issue, and I understand that those who say, and we've had a rule for a while that, we're not going to fund through Medicaid, we're not going to fund undocumented immigrants, and as with a lot of things, I don't think we should be fighting that debate over health care. I think we should deal with the immigration issue. Our position is very simple. If you are a human being, if you are in this country and you get sick, you have a right to be taken care of. Now, how we work that out in the legislative process, I'm not sure, but just because you don't have the right documents doesn't mean you shouldn't get the health care that you need to if you're sick.
One of the things that struck me about the healthcare debate, I know the Conference of Bishops has been active on abortion, but not just in that area, but in a number of areas, it seems to me that Catholic Charities of New York has been able to successfully navigate some of the more controversial political issues, if you will, domestic partnership rights and the like, in terms of your providing social services and acting as a contractor to the government, whereas other dioceses and other faith-based organizations are not as, maybe they're more confrontational about it politically, but they don't seem to be able to find how to thread the needle to be able to provide the services and at the same time maintain some type of integrity.
Well, I think our goal is to provide help for those people who are in need of all religions in New York. We are proud of the partnership that we have had with government, and it's been our experience over years, even when we had some real fights and we've had some real tensions, real difficulties, that when you work with people of goodwill, you can find a way that they can fulfill their responsibility as public officials, and we can fulfill our responsibilities to operate our programs in accord with our moral values. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you wind up in court. Sometimes you have to argue it out for a number of years. But my experience is the needs of the poor and the vulnerable are too important for us not to figure out a way that we work it out.
When Mike Bloomberg was first elected, the World Trade Center was still smoking. Keeping the city together was his priority. He had run on a platform that he was going to reform education, and that effort is ongoing. But he also had promised that he was going to address some of the problems of poverty in the city, particular homelessness. Yet the homeless population has continued to go up and not go down. What are some of the strategies that you think that the Bloomberg administration needs to adopt to sort of move the ball on poverty issues in the next 4 years? And is it possible to make those kinds of changes given the stress that we're under because of the recession?
I think it is possible to make those changes. Do I think it's going to be easy? No. But I also think there's a way where you can combine what needs to be done that helps us to get out of the recession. Two silver bullets: jobs and affordable housing. Jobs, affordable housing, and if you want me to name the next two things that are important, are jobs and affordable housing. If we can bring industry to the city, if we can create jobs, not merely in the financial industry, but in other places, in the other boroughs, that goes a long way towards getting us out of the recession and giving people the money they need to be able to pay the rent. Why is there a problem with homelessness? Because people can't afford the incredible amounts of money that it costs for apartments. So that's the issue. We have to, preserve the stock of affordable housing, and we have to increase it by programs to build more affordable housing.
So one of the issues that's confronting the affordable housing community is a demand by some of the unions and others that the developers pay construction workers a living wage, that they pay prevailing wages,
Right.
the union rates, when they build that affordable housing as a way of keeping those workers out of poverty. But in the affordable housing community, they say if they were forced to do that, they're going to wind up building less housing. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I think a lot of smart people around this town have tried to get at it, and you solve it as you go at it on a project by project basis. I do think one of the advances that has been part of conversation recently have been project benefit agreements that have been negotiated. You read in the newspaper, some say they don't go far enough, others say they go too far. We have to figure out how people are paid decent wages with benefits, and that contractors make a profit, and we come in at a price that the housing is affordable.
So you basically, I guess, take a very pragmatic view of a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
That we've had them for a long time, we're going to have them for a long
Right.
time, and you do the best you can with the resources you have available.
Exactly. And as a city, we have been incredibly successful. I mean, one of the programs that we do at Catholic Charities is what I call fancy non-categorical case management. What I mean is that's the GP of social services. Okay? If you have a specific problem, you can get help. If you have a very critical crisis, you can get help. But what about the family that's just lost a job? Those are the people who don't fit neatly into a category, and our goal is to keep them out of a category so that they can live their lives well. And we do that tremendously well in the city because we have so many services, but it's not easy to access them. This is not an easy town sometimes to get help. So one of the things we've made a commitment to in millions of dollars of putting trained professional social service people. So if you got a need, come to us. We'll help you to figure it out. We'll help you to design a plan to get help, and we'll be with you when you're going to get the help that you need. And that's what is critical around this town. So yes, am I pragmatic? Yes, because this is a good place. This is even a good place for poor people, but it's a place in which we have to help people to be able to live with dignity and respect, and we have to help them to be less poor.
If someone watching this show is in need of help, how do they contact Catholic Charities? What's the point of entry?
There are many different ones, but I'll tell you the easiest way these days. Just go to our website, Catholic Charities, Archdiocese of New York. Everybody gives those names, but I just say go to Google. Do Catholic Charities, Archdiocese of New York. You'll get to our website. There's a button that says For Help. Just click on For Help. You'll get a phone number, or you can send us an email, and we'll respond.
My thanks to Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, Executive Director of the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York. I'm Ken Fisher. Thanks for joining us on this edition of CityWide. Send your comments and suggestions to CityWide at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. Or contact us at www.cuny.tv.